Good afternoon, honorable member. Good afternoon, honorable members and the team from the department.
Good afternoon, Chair.
Koliswa, can you flag the agenda? I just suppose members, you have got the notice as they flag the agenda. We must continue with the meeting. I want to take this opportunity to welcome all members of the portfolio committees, department led by the DG. You are mostly welcome. As our tradition, I would like us to observe a moment of silence for meditation and or prayer as we open this meeting officially. Let's observe a moment of silence. Amen. And thank you very much, members. Koliswa, are you flagging the agenda? In your notices, members, we have indicated that today's agenda will be receiving the first quarter report on human settlement. Okay, there's the agenda. Can we then note the apologies officially, Koliswa?
Hello, Chairperson.
Yes, can we note the apologies?
Okay, Chairperson, good afternoon, Chairperson and the members and the colleagues. I've received an apology from member Basson and also from DM Chwete. They will not be able to join the meeting today. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much. I must add that I was informed that Honorable Konisio Pasung has been admitted at the hospital. So we should put her apologies. We want to convey the message of hope to her that she must recover, and through yourself, Koliswa, we should check Honorable Sopasumwe, and then we can then update us on her progress. Thank you very much. There is a funny sound. Koliswa?
Hello, Chair.
Yes, there is the sound that is following me as I'm speaking.
I don't want to check the Parliament YouTube. Their mic is on, so I'm not sure whether is it purposely or not.
Okay. Parliament team, can we, those that are not speaking or the mic that are not supposed to be on, can we mute all the mics so that we can hear one another? So, members, I want to take this opportunity to welcome all of you again. As I've indicated, the agenda today, we have invited the department to come and brief the portfolio committee on the first quarter report. And I must indicate that in terms of our program, we're supposed to have met with them last week on Tuesday. They've requested that we should shift it because of they had engagement with National Treasury on the adjustment budget. So I want to take this opportunity to welcome DG and your team and give you the floor to present.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. I thought you wanted to thank the DG for allowing to replace the Department of Water and Sanitation on such a short notice. Thank you very much.
No, thank you very much, DG. But now we did the same with you, Mus.
That's being said in tongue in cheek, Chairperson. We are very versatile. We always change our diaries when we are needed to change our diaries. Chairperson, without wasting much of your time, I can ask my colleagues to put the presentation on the screen. I am accompanied by my colleagues, the DDGs from the department, DDG Cheney, DDG Ngongo, DDG Bele, who's acting CFO, and DDG Butelezi. They're all here. All my DDGs are here. They will be assisting me to present the first quarter results. Chairperson, as you know, the first quarter of this financial year was marked or characterized by what we referred to as the hard lockdown. We had a hard lockdown in the first 3 months of the financial year, where it was extremely difficult to move around. The contractors could not take site occupation in April, May, and they started moving back in June. There's a lot of recovery that needs to be done. We're not stating this because we think we're the only department that was affected. I think all departments that are managing big capital budgets were affected by the hard lockdown of the first 3 months of the financial year. But we tried our level best to make sure that we disperse and we achieve some of the non-financial targets. And what we are presenting to you is the performance of the first quarter. That is the quarter that ended in June. Next slide, Sean. We've structured our presentation as follows. We will cover the purpose of the presentation. We will just to remind you about the departmental budget structure, because we changed this budget structure in the last financial year. After meeting with our stakeholders, we felt that our budget structure should be an objective-based budget structure. So we'll just remind you, we won't spend time on that. And then we'll go straight to the financial overview. The acting CFO will take us through the financial overview, and we will then look at the non-financial performance as well, the performance of the first quarter, as stated in the APP. My colleagues will assist me there. Joseph will come in and take us through the non-financial performance, and then we will ask Sis Lucy to come back again and take us through the performance of the grant and maybe talk to some of the challenges that we are faced with in in the provinces and in the metros. We're not that worried about the metros because we were closing the year, the municipal financial year, in June. We will show you how the metros have performed. I have asked the team to give us the actuals because the metros are working based on the accrual accounting system, which means anything that is accrued before the end of June, they can still spend money on it even after the end of June. So Lucy will take us through the performance of the grants, both HSDG and the USDG, and we will then move to the last component, the last slide. I will come back on item number 6, just to share with you those areas that would require attention from the top management of this organization, some of the areas that may require attention from your side as you interact with our implementing agencies. In this case, it's provinces and municipalities, because there's a tremendous amount of leadership that is required from the provinces, from the premier all the way to the accounting officers. We do want the premiers to pay attention to the performance of the departments. The MTRED, every year she goes on a roadshow and call meetings with the premiers and with the MEC and the HODs, and even some of the chairpersons of the committees in provinces, and ask them to pay attention to the performance of the provincial departments of human settlements. Next slide, Sean. Again, this is presenting to the portfolio committee our first quarter performance results. Next slide. This is our budget structure, just to refresh your memories about our budget structure. In the past, we used to have program 1 as administration, so it hasn't changed, and program 2, it hasn't changed. It's still about planning, it's still about policy. And then program 3, we used to lump all of these programs together: the informal settlements program, rental and social housing, and affordable. All of them used to constitute what was called program 3, which was delivery support. Now we've changed things slightly. Program 3 is informal settlements upgrading. As you know, we've got the informal settlements upgrading grant. We also have the national support upgrading support program. So this program focuses on informal settlements. Program 4 focuses on rental and social housing. We've got a target here for this term of government. We are expected to deliver about 26,000 units in terms of our rental and social housing program. And then we have the affordable housing program. Joseph is going to take us through the performance of all of these particular programs, but we'll start with the financial performance. First, program 5 is affordable housing, which is affordable home ownership. Here, we're targeting the gap market, and some of the projects that we are launching, there's projects that are intended to help us to deliver the stock, because there's no point in making the capital subsidies like FLISP available if there is no stock in the market. Affordable stock would range from 250 up to 500,000. There isn't much in the market that you can get these days for 300,000 in the affordable housing space. We kicked off the year by revising the bills. You remember that we presented the Housing Consumer Protection Bill of 2019. We published the bill for comments, and then we effected some of the comments, and we have revised the bill and updated it. You may want, maybe next time, to share with us some of the changes that are there, because we have to keep you on board all the time so that you get a sense of some of the comments that are coming out from the public. The second one is the Human Settlements Development Bank bill as well. We have revised this after we've received comments from National Treasury and the Chief State Law Advisors. This is the bill that will effect the establishment of the Human Settlements Development Bank. Remember, when we started this process, it was a two-stage process. The first stage was an integration stage, operational integration stage, which meant that we amalgamate the three entities, Nature, RALF, and NHFC. We have achieved that stage. We achieved that target in 2018. The next stage is what we call the establishment stage. And this is establishing the new bank now. And that's what we're busy with. And we have finalized the business case. We're now pushing for the bill. We were meant to present this to the Committee of DGs on Tuesday, but we took a decision after receiving the Chief State Law Advisor certification late that we will present it in the next week, in the next cluster of DGs, the social cluster of DGs. We will also present it in the economic cluster of DGs. The way it will end, it will be in cabinet. We'll present it to the cabinet committees. In the very first quarter as well, we had the 136 priority development areas declared. I'm sure you're quite familiar with this. This was gazetted in May, on the 15th of May. Please familiarize yourself with these priority housing development areas because these are areas that we're going to target for human settlements. And these assist us to deal decisively with backlog and also with apartheid spatial planning. In that quarter as well, we also dealt with where we had to respond within a short space of time. We had to package our response to COVID-19. We did well in some areas and we didn't do well in other areas. And I think we've shared with you some of those areas where things didn't go well, but there are areas where things were managed properly. Next slide. Next slide, please, Sean. Can we move the slide, please?
Apologies. Not moving altogether.
Is it frozen?
It's frozen temporarily, DG.
Okay. All right. This is just intended to give you the highlights of what happened in that quarter. This slide is about the highlights of the first quarter. Now I'm going to hand over to my colleague, the acting CFO, Lucy Berle, to take us through the financial performance. Lucy, can you take us through that financial overview?
Thank you, DG. Honorable Chairperson, honorable members of the Portfolio Committee, DG colleagues, good afternoon. I'll be taking you through the several slides that talks to the departmental expenditure. Honorable Chairperson, by the first quarter, we didn't know about COVID when we received this allocation. However, towards the end, I will present the adjusted budget because around this time, that's when Treasury requested that we need to reprioritize so that we can fund the response towards the COVID-19 pandemic. So this presentation is before the reprioritization and the adjustment. So when we started the year, the total allocation was 31.3 billion. And these programs are the ones that you spoke about, the 5 programs, and the budget is spread along the programs. Under the integrated human settlements, that's where our biggest grants or all our grants are sitting. Your HSDG and the USDG, hence is sitting at 28.9 billion. And on the first quarter, the expenditure was sitting at 14% because we had only transferred the HSDG. I'll talk to it towards the end. And also the affordable and rental, there was no much movement because if you remember very well, from the 1st of April until June, we were on lockdown. Hence, the expenditure on the total vote was sitting at 14%. Can you go to the next slide, please? Chair, as we are waiting for, oh, there it is. The next slide, Chairperson talks to the economic classification. Now, the economic classification, it shows you the spread around the compensation of employees, the goods and services, transfers and subsidies. Chairperson, you can see that the biggest bulk of the vote money is sitting under transfers and subsidies. That's where our grants and our entities are sitting. And the compensation of employees and goods and services, this is the operational budget, which constitute only the 3% of the entire budget, because the 30 billion is sitting around on the transfers and subsidies. And Chair, by the end of the first quarter, you can see that the compensation of employees was sitting at 20%, because there was no much movement, because that's when we're around level 4 and level 5 lockdown. So you can see that the goods and services is sitting at 5%. However, the transfers and subsidies, because it doesn't mean that during the lockdown we are not transferring, because by the time the president announced the lockdown, we had already approved the business plan, and the payment schedule was already approved by National Treasury. So we had to continue and transfer the money towards the provinces so that they can continue doing the responses and what they agreed that they will do on their business plan. Can you go to the next slide, please? Chairperson, this slide, it talks to the operational budget. When I started, I presented the 31 billion. So the 31 billion is the entire vote. However, the only budget that we are sitting with at the National Department to manage the 30 billion is the 947 million. So the operational budget is 3% of the entire allocation on the Human Settlement Development Grant, and we are showing it on the branches. So on the screen, you can see the total allocation, how much we have allocated to ministry, the Office of the DG, Corporate Services, Human Settlements Delivery Frameworks, the Human Settlement Strategy and Planning, the PPMU, the Office of the CFO, and the Office of the COO. And Chair, out of the 947 million, the expenditure was sitting as 12%. And if you have seen on the previous slide, the expenditure is mostly on compensation of employees and a bit on the goods and services, because there was no much movement around this particular quarter. Can you go to the next slide, please? Chair, as I mentioned earlier, that on our transfer payments, that's where all our grants are sitting and our entities. And around the first quarter, as the business plan of the provinces had already been approved, we had to continue with the transfers. Hence, we are showing that on the HSDG for the first quarter sitting at 25%, and the 25% represent the transfers of 4.1 billion that we have made to the to the provinces. And DG has already elaborated that it was the end of the financial year of the metropolitan municipalities. Hence, there's no transfer during the first quarter because we're already closing the books of the metros. The first tranche on this 11.2 billion was transferred around July, which is the second quarter. So, and Chair, also on the title deed and the emergency housing grants during the first quarter, there was no transfers. Also on our entities, the only transfer that we had made by then was for SHRA for the operational, which is 29 million, which constitute 42%. So the overall expenditure on our transfer payments on the first quarter was sitting at 14%, made up of transfers on the HSDG and the operational grant to SHRA. Thank you, DG and Chair. I'll hand over to the next one.
Thank you very much, Acting CFO. I'm now going to ask the COO to take us through Program 1. Program 1 is administration. DDJ Ngong.
Thank you, Chairperson, honorable members. The next slide, the overall performance of the department. I'm on slide 14. Thank you. Slide 14 indicates how we have performed in terms of terms. Chair, you will see that our admin, we only achieved 50%, which is 3 out of 6 planned targets. Which is integrated human settlements planning and development. We achieved 10 targets, and that constitutes 71%. Our informal settlements program, we only achieved 25%, which is 1 out of 4 targets. Chair, you will also see here, as DG had indicated, that this was during the hard lockdown. So much of the work under the program 3 required us to have some traveling and some interaction, and you could see there that the performance was extremely low, while compared with the previous program at 71%, which is planning, we were able to do some planning even under the hard lockdown. The next program, Chair, is rental and social housing, where we achieved 3 out of 7 targets, which constitutes 43%. And our next program, which is the last program 5, affordable housing, we achieved 50%, three targets out of 6 targets. And the overall, Chair, was the achievement of 20 targets against 37, which constitutes 54%, the overall. The next slide, which is the administration, slide number 15. Chair, with your permission, I won't read everything, but also indicate that there were certain common matters that were changed in the hard lockdown. You will see that the first target was in terms of the submission of the financial statements and performance for 2019-20 financial year. But during the lockdown, the extension was moved to 31st July 2020. This was due to COVID. 100% compliance with statutory tabling and prescripts, we achieved 71%. Chair, and some of those achievements, they constitute the departmental quarterly performance report, quarterly report, and our appearance before the portfolio committee and cabinet committees, because we were able to do those, as also they were visual, and quarterly reports on administration support provided. Chair, still under administration, on slide number 16, we had to implement 15% of the approved internal audit plan, and the target was achieved. Chair, we achieved 16%, and some of those areas that we achieved was the assurance audits, the information technology and performance and audit of performance information. Chair, again, this is an indication that where we could perform as a department, even though it was during the hard lockdown, we were able to do so as we were finding ourselves after the new normal. Slide number 17, it talks to the anti-fraud and corruption implementation plan. This target, Chair, we did not achieve it. It was partially achieved at 89%. And the activity that was not achieved was the fraud and ethics monitoring tool that we were not able to complete. On slide 18, risk management is part of performance. In the department, we planned for the 46% of the implementation of the approved risk management plan as approved by the risk management committee. Achieved 55% under this target, and this is a target that was well achieved. Again, Chair, this is the target that we were able to do even under hard lockdown. The second target, Chair, was the annual human resource implementation plan. This target, Chair, we had a challenge with it. We could not achieve this because to the fact that we had to redo the HR implementation plan and submit it. Chair, I'm on slide number 19. This is in terms of the legislation as per the approved legislation program. Under legal services, all our legislations, we work with approved legislation program for the year. And every quarter, we have to submit a report in terms of the progress on the legislation. We were able to do that, Chairperson. And of that are the reports in terms of the housing consumer bill that the DG also touched on it, together with the Human Settlements Development Bill, the status thereof. Chair, I will now hand over to Mr. Lishabane from slide 20, settlements planning going forward. Thank you, Chair.
Good afternoon, Chairperson, and the members, DG, colleagues. Chair, I must say it is very beautiful that just hearing the voices, you know who is talking. I was just marveling at that. Thank you, Chairperson. I will briefly go through the delivery programs. Chair, this program constitutes the planning and the development programs for our human settlements projects. Now, you will see, Chair, on this slide, the biggest deliverable here and the biggest achievement for the MTSF period is this declaration of priority development or priority human settlements and housing development areas. As DG indicated, this was 2 years of work, but it matured in this quarter with this declaration. And Chair, most of our work is going to be focused in this area going forward. Of course, Chair, we then now are focusing on putting in place the implementation plans for all of those areas that are declared. Next slide. This target, Chair, relates to our efforts in revitalizing distressed mining communities. As we previously reported, we continue, Chair, to implement this program in all the 23 municipalities as identified. And the focus here is around installation and upgrading of bulk infrastructure, informal settlements, upgrading provision of home ownership and rental housing opportunities in these spaces, but also, Chair, identification and acquisition of land to support this influx of people who require new accommodation. Of course, we also have to deal with legacy assets for those mines that are closing, and therefore those mining towns and other infrastructure that requires to be treated. So, Chair, what we are confirming is that we continued to work with the provinces and those municipalities to implement this program, albeit that the outcomes would have been weaker in Q1. Next slide. Chair, we also confirm that we rolled out our support to provinces to implement the registration of title deeds. And Chair, you are well aware that we have previously indicated to the committee that the registration of title deeds is not performing well. There were a number of things that we needed to do to achieve a turnaround. Lockdown notwithstanding, we had to be sure that the program itself is primed to perform in all the provinces, Chair. The next slide indicates we felt we should share with the committee some of the details that are involved in this program that the project office is dealing with to ensure that title deeds can be done. I won't get into the details, Chair, but safe to say that we felt we needed to provide you with the details of the going ons behind the scenes. Next slide. You will see, Chair, the sort of details that are going on, how we can deal with digitization, how we can respond, Chairperson, to some of the queries that people raise with the public protector, how we deal with, in some cases, Chairperson, double registrations that would have happened in the past, and just mobilizing different actors in the sector. The Department of Rural Development and Land Reform and SALGA became very important stakeholders, and we've had to engage with them. Next slide. Chair, what we are further confirming is that we've had to also work with provinces to implement the Zenzeleni program. That's the erstwhile EHP. Chair, working with provinces, to ours was to provide the support so that they can implement these, and therefore, Chair, we continue to work with those provinces. Next slide. Chairperson, you will see in this instance, we've also had to undertake some research, which research, Chairperson, as it related to human settlements planning and development, what are the research questions that arise that had to be done, and it was done indeed, Chairperson. The next target related to the monitoring of projects that are under implementation. Chair, this is where we were hit very hard. And I'm saying very hard because all these years, there's never been an issue about managing or rather monitoring the projects that are under implementation. The only thing that we could not do as well as we used to do was undertake project level visits, because hard lockdown meant everybody had to stay where they are. Even with special permits, we could send our officials anywhere in the country, but you then get to the other side, the municipal officials are not at work, even the provincial officials, there's no one on site. So we've had to accept that on-site monitoring of projects could not happen. But also, Chair, we could also establish that most projects, indeed, work had to stop on all of the project sites. And therefore, the hard lockdown was indeed real, even in this instance, Chair. Next slide. Chair, I confirm that as part of undertaking the reviews and ongoing evaluation of our programs, we also have to, in this case, needed to prepare conceptual frameworks for undertaking these reviews. We could deliver the terms of reference for such work, but accepting that we could not actually effect the evaluations because of hard lockdown, but we could prepare the terms of reference for the work to be done. I also confirm, Chairperson, that the compliance in terms of statutory tabling was achieved insofar as those submissions of entities, boards, and so forth needed to be done. Next slide. Now, Chairperson, in this regard, the capacity, part of the job of the National Department is to ensure that the capacities of provinces and municipalities are adequate, and therefore, from time to time, we have to attend to the assessment of that capacity. We confirm, Chair, that could not be done, of course, under hard lockdown. Very few people were at work at the time. We could only do Northern Cape at the time. Chair, the framework for partnering, that means you are working with external parties that are involved in informal settlements, and therefore not informal settlements, but delivery of our programs. That is your NGOs, CBOs, and other bodies, Chairperson. We could partially complete this work. We also, Chair, undertook the performance review of the grants as they were transferred. CFO pointed to the fact that we still needed to transfer, but therefore we could only achieve part of this target, but to assess performance of those grants as were transferred. Next slide. Now, Chair, we move to the informal settlements upgrading program. This, Chair, is a very big program, very important program, critical given the rapid urbanization in the country, but also the fact that there are more people moving into urban areas. And this informal settlements, we have a program to upgrade those that are upgradable in situ and relocate those that are in dangerous terrain. Of course, during lockdown, Chairperson, we could only achieve partially this target. And that is in respect of how you then undertake oversight visits that were initially planned. We couldn't do so. But Chairperson, I must confirm that the center stage around informal settlements was imposed by the COVID pandemic. You would remember, Chairperson, we were all worried that if this disease is transmitted the way it is, now what's going to happen to households living in those congested informal settlements? Sorry, Chair. And therefore, we then had to zero in and prioritize certain settlements that we felt could do with de-densification because they were congested, but also heavily packed. That was the program that took center stage going for in that period. Next slide. Chairperson, okay, the slides are not moving. Next slide, Sean. All right. Now, as with all the programs, Chair, we have to undertake ongoing research around informal settlements. Good work was done to understand this work to inform our implementation strategies. Further to that, Chairperson, the monitoring of projects that are under implementation, this could only be achieved in part, as again indicated, the implications of lockdown meant that there was very little activity on site, but also restricted movement across the country, Chairperson. Even with our special permits, you then find hotels were not available, guest houses were not, everything was locked down. So even if you could travel to wherever by driving, you will get there. Yeah, it was not feasible to do the work in terms of physically visiting project sites. Having said that, Chair, the rental and social housing program required that all provinces are supported to implement this program. We could not achieve this, Chairperson, because, again, COVID-19 implications of lockdown, but those that we could support, we did. But it was not as a full-scale program support as we would have wanted. So this target was achieved in part. Next slide. Next slide, Chair, also confirms that the community residential program, this is in the main the development of public sector hostels or alternatively building new rental accommodation in strategic areas. Again, Chair, while our target remained to ensure that this program is managed to all 9 provinces, due to the lockdowns, very little could be done. The research that needed to be done in this instance, it was done because, Chair, you'd be aware, research, there are different methodologies. You can do desktop, you can do telephonic interviews and so forth and so forth. So this was feasible. Further to that, Chairperson, the monitoring frameworks, and I'm talking here frameworks to undertake the evaluations of this program. Um, this could only be partially achieved. Chairperson, the statutory compliance, and this relates, Chairperson, to the entity that is active in this space, that is the SHRA. All of that work was done. And similarly, Chair, the capacity assessment for the implementation of this program could not be completed, Chairperson, save for one province. Next slide. Chairperson, the last program relates to affordable housing. And if you like, this is the gap housing that is needs to be developed. Chair, from the research front, research could be done. You could benchmark different aspects around this. The transfer of the FLISP subsidies that needed to be disbursed, those were disbursed, Chairperson. The monitoring thereof was undertaken. You will see, Chair, that the planned subsidies that needed to be done, 2,219. However, Chair, the provinces managed to disburse 763 of these subsidies. The frameworks, again, for evaluating this work could only be achieved in part. Lastly, Chairperson, the assessment of capacity could also only be done in part. Next slide. Chair, these are the numbers in terms of how the NHFC performed insofar as its part of the FLISP market. The compliance of the NHFC was achieved in terms of its own tabling of the performance reports at the quarter at that quarter for the previous quarter. Next slide. Chair, I won't get into the grants. The agreement, Lucy will deal with the grants. Let me thank you, Chairperson, as I stand down. Lucy.
Thanks, DDG. Chairperson, if I may continue, Chair, as I indicated earlier on, the initial allocation for the Human Settlement Development Grant was 16.6 billion, and we had for the first quarter transferred 4.1 billion, and all the provinces jointly had spent 1.3 billion to round it off. So from what we had transferred, 2.9 billion was not spent, and the reasons across the board when you talk to all the provinces is due to the lockdown. And honorable members, I think this was the first time that we had to experience this, and we're all not knowing what to do. We're all shocked. Hence, the performance of the provinces shows that they were unable to spend what was transferred to them. Can you go to the next slide, please? Chair, the next slide talks to the non-financial information. So this slide talks to the servicing of site. Also, you can see that the financial, the non-expenditure talks to the non-delivery or non-meeting of the targets, because when you check on the financial performance, the provinces were unable to spend what was transferred to them. Then on this slide, it shows that also on the non-financials, when you look at the target for Eastern Cape, for servicing of site, they've targeted to service 783, however, 457. When you look at Free State, there was no work reported on the servicing of site. When you look at Limpopo, they didn't put any target and nothing was done. Northern Cape, the same. When you look at Northwest, even though Northwest and Western Cape Chair, they had targeted that they would do some work on the servicing of site, but due to the restrictions that were put on the ground, they had a 0% output in that regard. So, Chair, what I'm putting forward is when you look at the financial performance on the first quarter, it talks to the non-financial because the money was not spent and there was no output. Can you go to the next slide, please? Chair, the next slide talks to the houses, the units that were delivered. Also, on the approved business plan, we agreed that for the first quarter, we will deliver 14,373. However, the houses that were delivered on the ground was 2,760, which was 19%. We had a shortfall. of 11,613. However, the shortfall talks to the 2.9 billion that was not spent, because not everything that was transferred to the provinces was actually spent because of the restrictions that were put on the ground. Can you go to the next slide, please? Chair, the next slide talks to the NHFC. And on my earlier presentation on the budget, there are monies that are put aside for FLISP, which is the capital, to NHFC, and the support grant to NHFC to implement this project on our behalf. So, Chair, this is what we received from NHFC, that they did receive application during the first quarter. 386 applications were received, and they did indeed approve 224, and the banks did offer or approve the home loans to 224 beneficiaries, and the applications that were declined were only 50. So, Chair, for the quarter under review, 224 beneficiaries were approved, and they were assisted through this program to get houses. So, can you please move to the next slide, please? Chair, as DG has indicated that even though the national department is on the first quarter, the metros are on their last quarter of the financial year. So the USDG is the 2019-2020 USDG that I'm presenting, even though it's sitting on our first quarter, but it's the last quarter of the metropolitan municipalities. So, Chair, the allocation for the USDG was 12 billion. The metros had an approved rollover of 123, and the total allocation was 12.2 billion. Chair, we had transferred the monies to the metros except the Nelson Mandela Bay Metro. Chair, Nelson Mandela Bay Metro, we didn't transfer all the 975 due to National Treasury. When we are about to transfer around February, we received a communication from National Treasury that Nelson Mandela Bay Metro had been put under Section 2162 of the Constitution. So we are not allowed to transfer any conditional grant to the Nelson Mandela Bay Metro. Hence, we didn't transfer everything. So I don't want us to say Nelson Mandela Bay did not spend. However, Nelson Mandela Bay did not have enough monies because 390 million was not transferred to them. And Chair, during the year under review, I think we did come to the Portfolio Committee to highlight the non-performance of the metros. And through our MINMEC, it was resolved that funds be stopped from the non-performing metros to the performing metros. Chair, we wrote to National Treasury, and National Treasury did gazette, and hence the allocation had to change to show the reallocations. So during the year, 301 was stopped from Mangaung to revise their annual allocation downwards from 813 to 511 million. City of Ekurhuleni, we stopped 120 million, that revised their allocation from 2 billion to 1.9 billion. And City of Tshwane, we stopped 200 million, and City of Cape Town, we stopped 60 million. And Chair, the Division of the Revenue Act, when you stop a portion of the allocation, you need to reallocate it backwards to the way it was before. Hence, we had to look at the other performing metros. So there were 2 performing metros that we were able to give them the money, which was Buffalo City. We gave them 340 million, where their allocation increased to 1.1 from 817 to 1.1. Also, City of Joburg. City of Joburg, they were given 341 from the funds that were stopped from the non-performing metros. So, Chair, the year-to-date expenditure, I'm going to the orange column. Out of the 12 billion, the year-to-date, as of the 30th of June 2020, is 9.4 billion. The unspent column, I'm going outwards to the blue, So as we closed the books for the metros, they were sitting with 2.7, to round it off, billion that was not spent. Chair, the expenditure was low around this quarter because we know that we were in the lockdown. So when you talk to all the metros, the reasons for the under expenditure is due to the lockdown because they were also being caught up there. The contractors had to leave site, were in level 5, so they couldn't spend. And Chair, you can also see that even those metros that we had stopped, for example, Mangaung, by end of the financial year, they didn't spend the revised allocation. The same as City of Tshwane. City of Tshwane, even though we had reduced their allocation by 200, by end of the financial year, 286 million was unspent. eThekwini, 185 million was unspent. City of Cape Town, 210 million was unspent. Chair, even though the metros were citing the COVID-19 pandemic, National Treasury did send out a letter to say that all these unspent funds will be subjected to rollover processes. So metropolitan municipalities were requested to submit the rollovers for the 2.7 billion that was not spent, and they were subjected to the MFMA circular for rollovers, and they were all subjected to Section 22, whether they were commitments. However, Chair, what we did with the Nelson Mandela Bay, because in our books, we were sitting with the 390 for the Nelson Mandela Bay that we did not transfer to Nelson Mandela Bay. We also requested a rollover on their behalf. And Chair, when we come back, we'll give you a report on the status of the rollover applications that were submitted and which ones were approved and then which ones were not approved. Can you go to the next slide, please? So, Chair, during that time, after the announcement of the COVID-19, we had to respond within what we had. And through the request from metros, because they didn't have enough in their coffers, we had, together with the National Management Disaster Center, request National Treasury if we can reallocate a portion within the USDG to respond to COVID-19. We wrote a letter, a joint letter because the section, the act requires that the National Department, together with the Disaster Management Center, jointly, they need to apply to redirect funds to respond if there is a state of disaster. And then National Treasury wrote to all the metropolitan municipalities and requested them to respond to them in writing if they are having uncommitted funds within their USDG. Chair, under the column that is written COVID-19 approved budget, this is what this metro said. They are willing, or 2.4 billion can be redirected to look at the COVID-19. So within the 12 billion that I spoke about earlier on my previous slide, 2.4 was set to respond to COVID-19. However, Chair, as at end of the financial year, 30 June, 1.3 billion rather was spent. So not 100%. And Chair, the good news is AG is looking at this in detail, because I think we know that the president did request Auditor General of South Africa to look at all the COVID-19 procurement, the expenditures and everything. And the AG from our side, they've requested all this information. We have given it to them. We are still waiting because they're still currently auditing the 2.4 billion that was redirected from the USDG to respond to the COVID-19. We haven't received the final audit report on the 2.4 billion. And I think, Chair, is because AG currently is still busy auditing the books of the metropolitan municipalities. So when they are done with the audit of the municipalities of local government, they will be able to give us the report on the 2.4 billion. Can you please go to the next slide? Chair, the next slide talks to the title deed restoration grant. Chair, for this financial year, the allocation before the adjustment budget was 577 million. And Chair, I want us to go first to where it's red. Chair, when we closed the year in March, I think we came when we presented our fourth quarter to the portfolio committee, we indicated the unspent funds, and we did indicate that the provinces were requested to request rollovers from National Treasury. So, Chair, I'm giving a report back to say last financial year, 295 was not spent from the title deed restoration grant. However, National Treasury approved only 88, 32 from Eastern Cape and 55 from Gauteng. And Chair, the rest of the unapproved money was surrendered back to the revenue fund. So last financial year, and this is talking to what DDG Lishabani was talking to regarding the non-performance of the title deed. You can see that even last financial year, 295 was not spent by all the provinces because we had already transferred. By end of the year, we had transferred all the allocation to the provinces. However, only 88 was approved. 207 reverted back to the revenue fund. And Chair, can I please go back to the next slide, please? Oh, we done. So then I thought we are having the adjustment budget. Oh, yes. Chair, we have the adjustment budget. So during the first quarter, Chair, I think that's when the president announced the 500 billion fiscal support package and the impact on the COVID-19. So the next few slides, Chair, will be talking to the adjustment on our 31 billion that I spoke to earlier, my initial slides. So after the president had announced, and then based on the analysis by National Treasury Chair and members, 130 out of the 500 was required to be reprioritized within the current financial year, which is the 2021. So it meaning that from our 31 billion, we had to make adjustment so that as human settlements, we contribute to the 130. Can you go to the next slide? So as the National Department of Human Settlements, we sat down, we looked at our 31 billion, and Chair, this is the adjustment that happened. So we're sitting with 31 billion, and after the special adjustment budget, we are sitting at 29 billion. The compensation of employees, it was not touched. However, Chair, the goods and services budget was reduced. Chair, under the goods and services, was reduced by 28.5 million. 20.3 million was coming out of the title deed restoration support, and which is sitting under consultants and advisor services. And Chair, during the first quarter, because we're on lockdown, and I think members will be happy that we're not traveling, we had a saving on the travel and subsistence. And even going forward, also when we come next time, we'll be presenting again the other savings that they were done by National Treasury that we had to put forward regarding our goods and services. So Chair, our total goods and services was reduced from 514 to 485. And also, Chair, on the transfers and subsidies, we had to look at the grants because the grants for the first quarter, they were not performing. And also, we had to look at the debt rental relief. So, Chair, on the provinces and municipalities, which is the HSDG and the USDG, 2.8 was reduced from the two grants and the other grants. Let's go to the next slide that gives a breakdown on the grants reduction. Chair, the HSDG was reduced by 1.7 million. The Urban Settlement Development Grant was reduced by 1.1 million. And Chair, Due to the poor performance on the title deed restoration grant, and I know that members won't be happy, however, we had to revise the title deed restoration grant by 377. However, when we did the revision check, we said we will increase because we needed to respond to the pandemic. We reduced the title deed restoration grant. However, that 399, it didn't go back to fund the 130 billion. It went to increase the provincial emergency housing grant. So, Chair, the provincial emergency housing grant moved upwards from 394 to 672. The municipal emergency housing grant, we didn't touch it. However, the title deed restoration grant went down from 577 to 200. And Chair and honorable members, I think from the earlier presentation that I made on the non-performance of the grant and the monies that had reverted back, hence we had to reprioritize this funding to go back to the provincial emergency housing grant. And Chair, due to the rental market that was also suffering, people out there in the rental market, social rental, private rental, they were unable to pay rent. That market was in dire need of assistance. Hence, we reprioritized 600 million, 300 for affordable rental debt relief was reallocated to SHRA, and also NHFC for the affordable rental debt relief, 800. So the total special adjustment on the grants, Chair, is 2.8. The next slide, Chair, they're giving us, can you go to the next slide, is the HSDG. It's just honorable members and Chair to see that we did look at all the provinces when we were doing the cut. However, there's one province that we didn't cut it, which is Northern Cape, Chair. You can see that all the provinces, they are above $1 billion, except for Northern Cape, which is getting 390 million. So we requested National Treasury to say, instead of adjusting the allocation for Northern Cape, we let it stay be like the way it is because they are getting the least on the HSDG allocation. So we looked at the HSDG allocation formula. We used the formula so that we can reallocate the cut to all the provinces except the Northern Cape. Chair, the same goes to the USDG, the next slide. The USDG, we used the allocation formula that we are using to allocate the main allocation to effect the cut. So all the metros were affected equally. They shared the same equal cut on the 1.1 billion. And the same as the title deed restoration grant, Chairperson. I think the next slide talks to the 200 and the cut and the revised adjustment allocation on the title deed restoration grant on the 200. Chair, I think my presentation will end here. Thank you so much. Thank you, members. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, DG.
Thank you, Lucy. And the next slide, Chairperson, is the last slide. And here we are simply drawing your attention to areas that would require our attention. The first part, Chairperson, simply means that we have to review our departmental strategic and annual performance plans. You've lost more than 2 billion rands in your budget. You can't remain with the same non-financial targets because the money has to buy those targets. For instance, 2.2 billion rands can buy you more than 10,000 service sites. It's a significant number of top structure units. So we have to look at our strategic plans and our annual performance plan. That exercise is underway. The second part, Chairperson, is that we need to renew our focus on the delivery targets in informal settlements upgrading, in social housing, in affordable rental, in title deeds restriction and in rapid land release, and integrated residential development. If you notice, these are the programs that we're focusing on. Sometimes in human settlements, we use the word programs and policy interchangeable. What it means is that our policy focus is on these areas. It's on informal settlements upgrading, it's on social housing, it's on affordable rental, it's on title deeds, it's on rapid land release. I think we have been very fair with provinces when it comes to title deeds. I think we've been patient, extremely patient. But I think it's quite clear at this stage that we can't do the same thing the same way and expect different results. I think there are provinces that have demonstrated the capacity to deliver on this particular program, the title deeds. They have structures in place, they have professionals, they have land surveyors, they have town planners, and they have conveyancers. A province like KZN, even though they still have a long way to go, we think that they have a structured program in place. Unfortunately, we can't say the same about Northwest and Eastern Cape. I think those two provinces are still lagging behind. I think Free State is also struggling big time when it comes to title deeds. But we're changing the modus operandi. We really think that we have to amass capacity to get a little bit more hands-on, because we account for the poor performance in provinces, because the budget goes to them. There are accounting officers there, there are MECs there, there are premiers there in those provinces, but things just don't happen. And we think that at this stage, we have to change tact on title deeds. Joseph and his team is working out a different model where we can assist those provinces that are not performing very well. We can't be everywhere. We don't want to overstretch ourselves, but we think that in provinces like Eastern Cape, we have to be more hands-on and help them to deal with the title deeds. I think part of the problem here is township registers that were not opened. So you have to retrofit all those plans, because if there are no subdivisions that were done, then you won't be able to release title deeds. This morning, I met with the two HODs from the Free State, HOD of Kokta and the HOD of Human Settlements, to decide how we can sort out title deeds, informal settlements upgrading, rapid land release, and also focus on some of the municipalities that are not servicing the debt that is owed to the water boards. I think it was a very progressive meeting. The third area of focus, Chairperson, is that we need a robust monitoring and evaluation process. And this will enable us to hold provinces, municipalities, and entities accountable. We pay people as accounting officers a lot of money, and we pay CFOs, you have CEOs of entities, and we think that consequence management has to kick in. This thing that the national department has to be an any department is not sustainable. I think if CEOs and municipal managers and HODs of the entities are not doing what they are supposed to do, they need to pack and go, simple as that. And they don't report to us, by the way, they report to the political leadership in that province. There's nothing much that the National Accounting Officer and the National Executive Authority can do if the Premier who appointed the HOD is not willing to move. If HODs are not performing, I think we need to take some decisions, and we want the portfolio committee to assist us, because we present this information to you so that when you do your provincial oversight visit, you can have discussions, serious discussions with the premiers and the MECs of those provinces that are not performing, because provinces are not lower levels of the national sphere of government. In terms of the constitution, provincial governments and local government, they exist as independent but interdependent spheres. So we can't make decisions for provinces to fire an HOD, but premiers premiers can make those decisions because these premiers who appoint HODs. So we have to hold each other accountable when performance is not happening. I also want to stress the point, Chairperson, that as much as we keep talking about the hard lockdown, these officials that I work with at the national government level in this department, we take pride of ourselves because we take full responsibility when things have gone wrong. We don't displace accountability and responsibility. I don't want the hard lockdown to be used as if it's an excuse for poor performance. Where we have not performed, we take full responsibility. But in this case, I think every South African knows that in the month of April and in the month of May and in the month of June, we had a hard lockdown in this country. It was extremely difficult for material suppliers, for contractors, for professional companies, engineering consulting companies to move around during that period. So a lot of projects didn't start on time because there was just no movement. I think every South African knows that. But where things have gone wrong, we want to take full responsibility, and we do that. We pride ourselves for taking full responsibility when things go wrong, and we don't end there. We move to fix the problem once we have identified the problem. We think that this country is going to crack the planning challenges that we've been faced with if we all focus on the DDM model. The discussions that I've had with various HODs of provinces and various district municipal managers, I am convinced that if we drive the district development model aggressively, we will be able to achieve the economic recovery plan that the president has announced. But I also think that we will be able to prioritize the budget properly, because the biggest challenge that we have right now is that the budget is compartmentalized. Human settlements does its own little thing that talks to human settlements. COGTA, they run the MIG and they focus on what MIG must do. Water and sanitation does the WISIC. They do a little bit of what they have to do with WISIC and ARBIC. There's no integration. But at the district level, we can integrate better, we can plan better, we can prioritize the budget better. And we have taken it up as a challenge in the department that we will provide that leadership at the district development level. If we master the art of planning, human settlements will benefit because some of our products and services, they come downstream. COGTA and other departments are responsible for the upstream activities. If there's no bulk infrastructure, there's nothing much you can do in the area of servicing of stands, servicing of building housing units. You can't upgrade informal settlements if you don't have bulk. You need to satisfy yourself first that the carrying capacity, the carrying bulk is in place before you upgrade to the informal settlements. All of those things are planning issues, they are coordination issues, and we think that they can be better handled at a district level. So that's why in the department, almost every official is a DDM manager. We have a representative, a DDM representative from the department in all the districts. So if you visit, for instance, any district or Tambo, we have a DDM manager there who's responsible for the department, who works with other officials from other departments. So we will provide the leadership in coordinating our sister departments, COGTA, water and sanitation, and make sure that things get done at the district level. And the last one, Chairperson, our response to COVID-19 has meant that we have to do things differently. We have to innovate. In fact, what we're focusing on now is to upgrade our ICT environment, because there's a lot that we can achieve without visiting the sites. As we reduce the S&T budget, we need to upscale on the ICT budget, and that's the new normal. That's the new way of doing business. We've made mistakes in our response to COVID-19, and we think that where there's consequence management, must be executed, but also COVID-19 is presenting an opportunity for us to innovate, and we have to take up those opportunities. Chairperson, we're more than willing to take questions and comments, and we will respond accordingly. That concludes our presentation today, and this was the presentation of our first quarter results. Thank you very much.
Chairperson?
Where's the chairperson?
I'm here.
Oh,
Thank you very much, DG and your team. I'm going to allow members to interact with the report. Can I have a show of hands in the system? I can see Ms. Honorable Rebecca Mushala, Honorable Tafeni. Can you start, Honorable Mushala?
No, thanks so much, Chairperson. I've acknowledged here that at the end of the first quarter, the department has spent 86 million against a projected spending of 102 million on personal cost. This represents a spending that is 15.8 million lower than projected due to vacant posts not filled, while the department has a funded establishment of 635 posts. It currently have a staff complement of 572 employees. The 63 vacant posts represents a vacancy rate of 9.9%. So what are the reasons for the slow rate of filling of vacant posts? The last question, Chairperson, is with regard, what are the reasons for the failure to submit? No, before that, it was noted that municipality and provinces did not submit requests for emergency housing funds. How a temporary housing solution offered during the lockdown period? Finance. For example, the emergency shelter provided to homeless persons in the city of Cape Town at Strandfontein. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Mushala. Honorable Tafeni.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, what are the reasons for provincial department not submitted their business plans for approval? And number two, Chairperson, I want to know, similar, what are the reasons for the National Housing Finance Corporation not submitting claims for payments? So spending on payments for capital assets in the first quarter was 700,000 compared to the project spending of 200,000. This represents overspending of 500,000, so 349.9%. Can the department provide details around this? I thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much. Can we have Honorable Emba? Powell?
Thanks, Chair. It's Emma, not Amber.
Oh, Emma. Thanks.
So just to touch on what my colleagues have touched on, I'm just going to read from one of the research reports. Despite higher than projected spending on Program 2, the department has not transferred the title deeds restoration grant during the first quarter. This is due to the provincial departments not submitting their business plans for approval. I just want to pause here and remind the department that at the time that these business plans were being presented to the committee, we as a committee were told that the provincial departments hadn't submitted their business plans on time, with exception of the Western Cape, and that they'd requested an additional week. And that the department gave us their guarantee that everything was in order and that, you know, the financing would still run according to plan. Now, you know, when we look back at Q1, we see that this spending didn't happen because the provincial departments didn't submit their business plans. And I also just want to go back to, I think, 2 portfolio committees ago, the acting director general told us about consequence management and that there was an, you know, emergency meeting with the HODs about lack of compliance and all of the issues that were flagged in the AG's report. So I'd just like to stop there and ask, we know that the title deeds couldn't be spent because provinces didn't adhere to timelines. What consequence management steps and remedial action has been taken in that regard? Then to touch on my 2 previous colleagues' questions, we also note that the department didn't transfer to the 2 entities, CSOS and the HDA, as they had not submitted claims for their respective transfers. And that this claim submissions process forms part of the financial management requirements of entities in terms of the law, and they didn't adhere to that law. So I'd like to understand if Treasury approved rollover that these entities used for expenditure during the time, and again, what the consequence management for this is. And then just give me a second, please. And then what are the reasons for the failure to submit claims for payment by the Social Housing Regulatory Authority? Same goes for the National Housing Finance Corporation. Then moving on, when we look at slide 6, and this is perhaps a slightly more esoteric question, but when we look at slide 6, we see that 136 declared priority development areas is listed as a win by the department, the gazetting of these PHSDAs. But I want to find out if the department, the national department, has provided or is providing the provincial administrations with additional HSDG funding or other sources of funding through which to establish and build on what's been gazetted, because I'm looking at a letter that the minister, the head of department, sent to the provincial administration in September, which actually told all of the provincial departments, I'm looking at the one that was specifically sent to one province, but that provinces must actually relook at all of their draft 2021-2022 business plans, and that the department was asking provincial administrations to start prioritizing the delivery of service sites as opposed to formal B&G houses. And obviously that a province is now required to obtain permission from the National Accounting Officer for any procurement that goes out, and that all provincial administrations must put measures in place to downscale the delivery of units, and that projects that are planned to deliver will only be supported if they benefit minority groups, so elderly, military veterans, XYZ. So we've listed these PHSDAs as a win. There's 136 of them. Question is, how do these PHSDAs work in light of National's instruction to provincial administrations to start putting plans in place to downscale the delivery of units going forward? And is the department providing additional funds? And then just a question of clarity to our finance gurus. I just want to understand on slide 11, it says that 0%, nothing in terms of USDG was transferred for the financial year as at Q1. But when we go further down the presentation to, I think it is slide 41, we can see how much money has been spent in the first quarter on the USDG. So can I just ask for clarity? Is it that the National Department didn't transfer additional USDG in our financial year Q1, but that the expenditure against the Urban Settlements Development Grant as at 30 June is in light of transfers, excuse me, that were already made to those municipalities before the COVID crisis hit? And then also, I just note with concern on slide 37, the Western Cape Provincial Government was able to spend over 100% of its HSDG allocation by June, which is fantastic if you're looking just at the number. But then if we move down to the further slides, we see that only 21% of their housing targets were met. So they were able to spend 100%, but only 21% of targets were met. And from speaking to my colleagues in that department, my understanding is that given the rampant land invasions that took place across most of the country during that time, the National Department wasn't able to provide any additional funds to provincial administrations or municipalities to guard the human settlements development projects that had already broken ground. So provincial and municipal governments had to use HSDG funding in order to safeguard sites with security, additional measures, etc. And that's actually resulted in a lower yield of houses. So I suppose that's my last question is, are there plans that the National Department has to perhaps capacitate municipalities and provinces across the country with additional sort of perhaps security budgets or any additional budgets that they can use to start safeguarding these sites, given the desperation of South Africans, which then engenders these very frequent land invasions that we're seeing across the country. So just to understand how the department's going to help, because we can't have departments spending 100% of their budget, but then only, building 21% of their target because they're using their budgets for security. That's not sustainable. So yeah, those are my questions for now. Thank you. Chairperson, back to you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Powell. Honorable Mashiko.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much. Good evening, colleagues. Chair, I must say that obviously, if you take the Q1, which starts in April, May, June, which is what the department is accounting on, as a matter of fact, we will have a challenge to even want to assess and analyze, given the fact that we all know that is the hard lockdown 3 months. But as oversight committee members, we still need to ask our questions as if that did not happen. But we must, and I'm sure the department is overemphasizing that point, that each and every South African knows that there was hard lockdown of 3 months of very hard in the world, not only in South Africa. However, Chair, I would have asked a question, but it is answered now by Honorable Emma Powell about Western Cape, because there is a writing there that says they have spent 100% of their budget, but they only have met 21% of their targets. I will have asked the question, what does that mean in material fact? But in the substantiating input by Member Powell, it means the Western Cape have wrongly used the money given the fact that the department did not give them additional money out of the fact that there was lockdown thing. And I think the department must apply its mind properly in listening to Western Cape justification, because that justification might make sense later on, because indeed we all shall know that the land grabbing was very rife in Western Cape and all other provinces. And if they have done that, do we want to punish them, or do we want to say to them, we will then have to substitute that expenditure given the fact that there was a lockdown? But then it must substitute the view that they have spent, because spending is not only about money, it's also about the project meant for the money. But as I'm saying, the department in application of consequence management of the wrong spending, we need to take into cognizance that they did not do a bad faith expenditure, because indeed there was a need for them to defend that which land grabbing was happening in Western Cape. Chair, as a consequence, look, in the lockdown months, there was money which was meant for the lockdown purposes. Our expenditure is at about 68% of the money of the lockdown. The DG is not substantiating on what is it that it could have even blocked us. And I know he's saying that, remember, there was a difficulty of moving from one point to the other, therefore spending was a difficulty in that 3 months of lockdown. The suspicion I must hear from the DG is that remember, we are now in the second month of the third quarter. We have not heard what has happened in the second quarter and even in this second month of the. If we, in preparation of the second quarter, DG, you might want to talk to what is it that you have done in terms of your consequence management, in terms of your real, for instance, what Member Powell is raising. You have already started writing to department to prioritize the change in their priorities. Are the results are they positive? If not, what is going to happen? And I think it is going to be important that as we speak to the second and the third quarter expenditure or budget performance, please be specific in those issues in order for us to complement the failures of ourselves as a country, given the 3 months of the lockdown. Otherwise, the first quarter, we have got nothing to account for, because we all know we were not working and the economy was stable. But I'm saying the department cannot just be seen not to want to have a plan to change that lockdown months in a way of wanting to spend more, and indeed to change the pattern of spending as it was envisaged under normal circumstances to an abnormal one, that is the lockdown. But as I'm saying, where I'm sitting, I hear that indeed in the first quarter were the difficulty of spending, and we must appreciate it and just note it. Thank you, Chair.
Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable Mashego.
Chairperson.
Honorable Makoto.
My gadget does not have an icon for raise your hand. That is why I was unable to raise my hand. Can you please allow me to ask a question?
Yes, I'll note you, because let me take those that are on the system first, my dear one.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Honorable Sikhai.
Thank you, Chairperson. Good afternoon, my colleagues and the department. Say good afternoon.
Afternoon, Honorable Sikhai.
Thank you, Chairperson. Appreciating the report from the DG. It's a sad report Chairperson, but I think our understanding.
Honorable Sifai, the team for media, they are requesting that we switch on our camera. Can you do that?
You, ayo, jani kaloku. Make ndilunge che, andime kake. Iyalunga ke iphike ngokulo. Ndicofile ngokokwam iphingo
So
lapha.
we can see the ceiling only. Can't see you. You can just see you. Yeah, okay. Yes.
But
Now we
kutheni
can
mna
see.
ndingaziboni? I can't see myself. Why I cannot see myself?
Probably you have used the wrong button, but we can see you. Continue.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. It's fine, even if I don't see myself. I was saying the report presented to us, it's a sad report where the department could not perform well because of the pandemic. And our understanding is so much tested in a way that says our expectation that we had maybe would be satisfied in the next report. We need to have our hopes very high because DG, I think all of you now, you are so energetic because we are the rest of 7 months. No one is a monkey. One hopes, Chairperson, that a very clear strategic report will be presented to us, which clarifies the areas that could be fast-tracked. I heard the DG talking about focus areas and those priority areas. But it's going to be important that in that process, you are strategic to deal with the issues that are going to be very easy for you to be fast-tracked because we do not have time, more especially for the coming year. The second issue, Chair, is that as you plan, I heard Mr. Joseph talking about one of the issues that the department had to do is to be able to identify land and some legal assets in the process. But what is always important is that the planning must not just be ordinary planning. As you plan the land, you should be strategic because redress should accompany the land planning, where houses that are need to be built now needs to be considered in a particular piece of land, fertile land, or you can call it virgin land, so that our people must not be taken to land that is a desert and land that is not developable on other amenities, and land that is away from the economic amenities. And we start afresh that we cannot have infrastructure here, pipes and all those issues because the land here is too much barren. And
okay, you are gone. We can hear you now. Proceed.
Okay, So it's going to be very important that as we do that, we are able to consider our people as people, give them dignity that they have never been given before in the land planning process. The other issue is the issue of considering the cries and concerns of traditional authorities. Sometimes we always neglect or perhaps forget their role within the land development and their role within our communities. So it's going to be very, very important that as you plan that land, Mr. Mashabane, you are able to prioritize them in terms of engagement. They only want just an engagement, so they are part and parcel of decision making. They claim land, and you can discuss that against you. You will not win. You will not win. And I think the Constitution has accepted that they are part and parcel of government, and they are also governing with us. The other area, this which I think is the last one, Chair. I heard the DG, I'm not sure if the DG, who was talking about even before the lockdown, other municipalities could not perform, even metros, because of one, the procurement issues. Now, one doesn't understand because the issues of procurement are laid down in the Constitution, in the pieces of legislation. You only need officials that understand, which are employed for that. Is it because there's a scarce skills in the country to get those people, or those that we have are not skillful enough to do the work? Because you can have land, you can have budget, but if you don't have persons, a human resource to implement, you'll stay with that money and land. We need to create a very clear understanding of who is well capacitated to do the job. We must not have people that are here to learn on the job. There are issues that you cannot employ an affirmative action person. There are areas that you cannot by virtue of their significance. So we need to be told what was the problem. And also in your presentation of recovery plan, maybe you'll tell us, how do you think you'll be able to rectify the problem? Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable Secretary. Honorable Mokotu.
Thank you, Chairperson. I would like to ask the department the following question.
Can you switch on your camera?
Okay, I'll switch it on. Thank you, Chairperson. Spending on payments for capital assets in the first quarter was 700,000 compared to the projected spending of 200,000. This represents overspending of 500,000. Can the department provide details around this? Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, hello?
Yes, thank you very much, Honorable Mokotu. Thank you very much.
Were you able to hear my question?
Yes, they've heard it. You're very loud and clear, my dear one.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. I don't see any other hands in the system. Let me join the team to ask question. Mine is only one that because DG, we've lost time. Let me start by saying construction work within particular months. And we have already lost time, particularly in the provinces that your construction month is around May, June, July, August. And now it's a rain time. Even if we are putting recovery plan, are we going to consider this issue? You know, it's very different with the Western Cape, because Western Cape this month their rain situation is lesser, and other provinces this time it's a rain month, the month that we are left with within the system. Just to check in terms of the recovery plan. Do we think, are we going to make it, or we should then start to encourage provinces to do other plans, like in areas where you have allocated 500 houses for one contractor because of the situation, therefore they can go into negotiation to give it to other contractor to save the budget for human settlement. Because my worry is that we are losing budget every now and then. There is adjustment, or there is a special adjustment. We become target because of non-spending delayment. But the reality of the matter with this one is that we've lost the month for construction in other 8 provinces. And this month is the month that you might not even have a work that is going on because of the rain. Just to check what arrangement will be made, or will we take cognizance of that as we do the recovery plan, and make sure that we don't lose funds because now it will be the other disaster, which is the rain. So I just wanted to add on that one. Can we then request the department to respond to the questions?
Thank you very much, Chairperson. We've noted quite a number of questions, and I'm going to ask Acting CFO Lucy Bell to answer all the financial related questions. I've noted a few, and then I'm going to ask Joseph Lishabane to take care of the some of the non-financial questions, and formal settlements, upgrading, priority housing, development areas, and other related questions about the business plan. Let me start with the acting CFO, and then Joseph will take care of some of the questions, and then I'll answer questions about the recovery plan, the reallocation, and all the questions around the SCM. Lucy, can you also answer the questions on overspending as well? Let me start with the acting CFO, Chairperson. CFO. Acting CFO, are you still with us? Okay. Is something wrong with it?
Oh, the system is bad. I can't hear. Can we get Lishabani in the meantime, DG?
Yes, Chairperson, it looks please sort out your connection. Please sort out your connection. Your system is cramping. We can't hear you. Please sort out your connection. Joseph, can you come in the meantime?
Thank you, DG. Chairperson, the number of questions that I will respond to include, perhaps let me start with the questions relating to provinces not submitting compliant business plans on time. And that relates to the title restoration grant. Chairperson, let me confirm that on the title deeds, we took a very hard line, and we've explained that to the committee previously, that we are insisting on provinces specifically adhering to the outputs as specified in the grant framework. Now, Chairperson, we were confronted with a scenario that we interacted with the provinces, in fact, long before the start of the financial year, to ensure that
Changing the Wi-Fi, I'm putting I think I'm back now.
Yes, CFO, we can hear you, but can you wait for Mr. Lishaban to finish?
Thank you, Chair. Now, we, having worked with the provinces for the business plans that indicate specifically which township is going to be formalized, which properties are going to be registered in whose name, where are the areas where there's conflict over the property, and therefore the dispute resolution plan for each one of those. Chairperson, I must admit that this was very good for us to get down to the micro elements of this work, given that up till now, as the DG has indicated, the program has not been performing well. Therefore, we had to change course to insist on specific deliverables. Chair, all the provinces submitted eventually what we deemed approvable business plans. All of them were assessed. All of them were given feedback. You will see in the second quarter, Chairperson, at what point we approved those business plans. Some provinces, we had to approve part of their business plan because only that part was compliant. There was one or two provinces, I know the Western Cape, the business plan was practically empty, so we could not approve the funds for that plan. Similarly, provinces such as the Eastern Cape are struggling significantly on coming to terms and grips with what needs to be done to deliver on the title deeds. Now, Chairperson, as I indicated, ultimately the business plans were approved. That is why the transfers could then be effected down later on, but not in the first quarter, Chairperson. I also want to confirm, Chairperson, that the priority human settlements and housing development areas that were declared, as we explained to the committee previously, an extensive process, in fact, this took 2 years, because of the consultations with provinces and municipalities about exactly where are the areas that are best suited to attend to spatial transformation and consolidation, which in our view, Chairperson, addresses issues of urban efficiency, peri-urban consolidation, as well as redress around past practices that alienated households from better opportunities. And therefore, Chair, these priority human settlements development areas as declared represents the spaces where we want to focus and achieve better settlement outcomes. Now, that also offers us the opportunity as human settlements. You would have heard the DG earlier emphasizing our zeroing in on the districts. That means in a specific district, there are specific areas that we want to focus on. We want to bring infrastructure. We want to bring all other public funds that are available because, Chair, you'd appreciate the public purse is limited. Therefore, we have to consolidate our investment in a space to achieve better spatial and settlement outcomes. I want to confirm, Chairperson, that it is in these spaces that you are able to then say to the private sector, we as the public sector, not just human settlements, we as the public sector are directing our resources into this space. Partner with us and bring your own capital into that space. We are convinced, Chairperson, that's what is required and that's what the sector and the stakeholders have welcomed quite openly, with not only verbally, but already there's activity in those spaces, Chairperson. Now, when we ask the provinces and the metros to reprioritize so that now that the areas are declared, going forward, all the business plans must prioritize investments in those spaces. And that's the essence of the correspondence to the provinces and the metros that Member Powell was referring to. Similarly, the MINMEC also accepted that the reality of our economy is that the grants and the fiscal envelope is shrinking. Now, when you are faced with that, you have to make trade-offs. We can't stop responding to the housing needs, but we can make trade-offs about what we spend the money on. Of course, Chairperson, many communities have indicated to us in various outreach programs and consultations with municipalities that actually government help us access that which we can't access anywhere else, a piece of land that is serviced. Many people are prepared to build for themselves. Many people are saying, if I have a piece of land, I can then have an address, I can have a place that I can consolidate and improve my housing circumstances. Of course, Chairperson, that means that those that are able will be able to do so. That is why we have then taken a view that the top structure, you must prioritize the needs of the elderly, as the DG pointed out, the needs of the people living with disabilities, the needs of child-headed households, and so forth. And that is a fairly reasonable criteria to prioritize the needs. The able-bodied persons, the able-resourced people can and are willing, Chairperson, to be able to put sweat equity to build the houses. Of course, it doesn't mean that the people are left on their own. That is the point that the minister was making about Zenzeleni, which means that we have to then provide the support, the building plans, the engineering support, the architectural support, and material mobilization so that those that need to build for themselves can build for themselves. But also, Chair, it triggers local construction, local economy, local builder, local draftsperson, and so forth that get activated, and that also consolidates social cohesion. Chair, I thought I must emphasize that part. Now, the case of the Western Cape, insofar as expenditure being 100%, yet top structure delivery being 21%, um, there are more factors than just the security, but let me deal with the security issue. Of course, the HOD did address us on the difficulties that they are facing insofar as responding to land invasions. Chairperson, this is not a new phenomenon. Gauteng province faces the similar difficulty where over the years, project sites would be invaded and they are carrying huge security costs. The advice that we gave to the HODs in a MINMEC was that you have a project, you have a developer, a contractor who has taken over the site. Part of site establishment includes providing security for that. So we have to reconcile that. But where extraordinary circumstances arise, you also have to account for these extra measures, security being one of them, in the project. Members should be aware the National Department does not sit with spare funding for other eventualities. So in all instances, the funding for all these eventualities has to be contained within the allocated amounts. And we've clarified that with the province's chairperson insofar as them having to account for those additionalities in terms of the project itself. Chairperson, let me also confirm that we have, and between the provinces and the municipalities, the process of land development requires that you consult with traditional councils that are in place. And by far, this has worked well in many cases. There are a few places where there are difficulties. However, Chairperson, those difficulties are dealt with in consultation with the Department of Traditional Affairs. But also, Chair, I can assure the committee that the Interministerial Committee on Land Reform is supporting this work on land development in consultation with traditional councils to avoid the conflicts that often arise. Chair, these are all the questions that I've noted. Let me see, that's Chairperson, perhaps we must also confirm that the performance report as tabled before yourselves also is informed and triggered by the performance targets that were set at the beginning of the year. And therefore, we still have an obligation, Chairperson, to be able to say to yourselves, to all oversight bodies, this was the target, this is the performance against those targets, and more so, this is how the public resources, the funds that have been availed to the department have been spent. And therefore, Chair, we are accounting for exactly that, notwithstanding the fact that the environmental factors kicked in like COVID-19. But Chair, we are comfortable to present the report as indicated. I will pause there, Chairperson. Thank you.
Thank you, DDG. CFO?
Thank you, Chairperson. I'm sorry about the connection that I had earlier on. Chair, I'll start from the beginning on the finance-related questions that were posed by the honorable members. I'll start from Honorable Mushala regarding the emergency and the municipal expenditure on the temporary shelters. When I did my presentation, Chair, on the USDG, I did indicate that 2.4 billion was put aside to respond to the COVID-19. So what we did, we revised the USDG grant framework to take into account the use of the USDG to construct the temporary shelters. So even though the city of Cape Town did not apply for the emergency housing grant, they have used that portion that I put on the 2.4 billion to construct. But because what we did, we revised the conditions within the USDG on the 2.4 billion to construct the temporary shelters. And this was also gazetted by National Treasury that for that money that's reprioritized, the municipalities are allowed to construct the temporary shelters using that portion that we have approved. And then, Chair, as I'm talking to the USDG, I think it would be best if I respond to Honorable Powell regarding on the initial slide there, we said that we haven't transferred the 11 billion, but when we go further down there, we are saying there's a lot of transfers in the expenditure. Honorable Powell, the financial years of national government and provincial government start from April to June. The municipalities' financial year starts from July to June. So when we are saying we are in the first quarter, which is April to June, is the first quarter of the national government. However, is the last quarter of the local government. So April to June, even though as the national department, we are reflecting the first quarter, and on the allocation on the 2021, which is the 11 billion, we have not transferred. However, when you look on the local government, they are on their last quarter. Their year, it ends in June. Hence, we are reflecting, we have to close the books of the metropolitan municipalities as of 30 June. Hence, when I tried to explain it, I said, this is the allocation on the 2019-20 financial year on the local government. Hence, on the 2021 books of the of the national government, the 11 billion we have not transferred. The first tranche on the USDG, it goes out on the 1st of July. So for us to make sure that we don't miss the timelines, what we do on the USDG, we transfer it in 3 tranches. The first tranche, it goes in July. The second tranche, it goes in November. The last tranche, it goes to municipalities during February, so that when we close the year end on the national government, we have already transferred what is due for the metros. And the metros, they've got that 3 months that they need to spend so before they close their books. Hence, I said, the 12 billion together with the 2.4 billion, AG is still auditing those figures. So we are still waiting for the final audited figure by AG. When you look at our annual report and our books, we are reflecting as the expenditure on the USDG as of the 31st of March. That's when the national department closes. So we have transferred everything, but we are reflecting the expenditure as of the 31st of March. But for us to close the whole process, we need to report on the expenditure on the metros when they close their year. Honorable Chair, the other question was on the transfers that were not made to NHFCs and the CISOs. Chair, on the slide on the transfers, yes, we haven't transferred to them. And Chair, the process is they need to request a drawdown to us. And there's certain things that we tick the box, they've done that, and then we submit. By the end of the first quarter, we haven't had submitted, transferred. However, Chair, as of the 30th of October, we have transferred to all the entities. So when we come back, we're going to show a different picture whereby the only money that was not transferred was the investment for Shra. But all the other entities, we had already transferred to them. The NHFC, we have transferred the support. We have transferred the capital grant for the flus. The Shra, we have transferred the CCG and the CISOs we had already transferred. So most of the transferred share, they happened during the second quarter, which is between July and September. However, as of October, we had transferred to most of them. I think DG, Ntateli Shabane has answered on the Western Cape, and I wanted to say, DG, you were there when we were discussing this issue. I was going to give it to you. However, Ntateli Shabane has answered to it. Chairperson, I think I've covered all the finance-related questions. Thank you.
Thank you,
Chairperson.
CFO. Yes, DG.
I'm going to ask DDG Cheney to respond to some of the questions. I think there were a few questions about SHRA, CISOs, and NHFC. There was also a question on the Western Cape financial and non-financial reconciliation. And there was another question on the recovery plan. So I'm going to ask Neville Cheney to respond to those few questions that have not been answered. Neville, and also the vacancy rate.
Afternoon, Chair, members, DG colleagues. Chair, just a couple of points. I think the first one is in relation to the fact that, and I think Mr. Leshabane has covered the issue around the question of the reprioritization of the service sites. I think it's also important to note in relation to Member Powell's point around what are the mitigation measures in relation to the illegal land occupations that have occurred. A more sustainable way and response from us is the introduction of the rapid land release and the upscaling of the rapid land release, because that's primarily what has driven that event in relation to where we are at the moment. I think the Western Cape non-financial performance has always lagged its financial performance in the first two quarters, because that's the way they have cash flowed their budget. So what happens is that there's a substantial amount of funding that goes into sometimes the planning, the material, the servicing, and you'll find a very big spike in their non-financial in the third and fourth quarter, and that's been a trend, and it's something that one has to respect. On the issue around the question of the SHRA, the CISOs, and the NHFC, I think acting CFO has indicated that those transfers have occurred. But I think it's also to be noted that, again, it represents and is dependent on how those entities cash flow themselves. The point that we need to remember in all of this is that given the fact that we're in a financial constrained period, and the fact that we've got to be very careful, even as a national department, in relation to the way that we manage our funds, the later you draw down, if there are no consequences to that, the better, because there's a substantial amount of interest that gets paid on that. So it's it's an issue that, yes, we get allocated the money, but if there's a cash flow process that allows us not to draw down the money earlier, then that's a strategic financial decision, and it's beneficial. On the issue around the question of the vacancies, you'll note that lockdown came into place on the 1st of April. So what in fact happened was that it was not deemed prudent, fair, or transparent if we advertised during that period. It was limited publicity from newspapers as well as other areas of media. So there's been a delay. But I think I need to alert, or we need to alert the committee that in relation to the second quarter, the number of posts available for filling in the department has dropped because the compensation of employees budget has dropped. Thank you, DG.
Thank you very much, DDG Cheney. There was a question, there were two questions about the recovery plan. I think there was another one on consequence management. I want to attend to those two questions. And Chairperson, if you allow, let's start with your question. Are we going to be able to recover, given that we are now going to the rainy season? Chairperson, we have looked at KZN. We have seen signs of improvement in KZN. Last week we met with the accounting officer, the HOD, and we went through the entire recovery plan of KZN, and I think they do have enough projects to take us to the end of the financial year. I think they have already spent more than 1.2 billion rands to date. They have a budget of about 3 billion rands. So we see signs of improvement in KZN. We think that Northwest, the only problem in Northwest, Chairperson, is those compliance issues. We think that there was a big mistake that the administrator and the two HODs didn't manage properly. The CFO of Human Settlements, remember the two departments are always together, Coxter and Human Settlements. We felt that the CFO should not have moved to local government. The CFO should have stayed with Human Settlements because that's where the biggest risk lies, in Human Settlements. And this is why, if you look at Northwest, the biggest problem in Northwest is all those compliance issues. But Northwest has reached the 40% expenditure mark. So we are not going to take money from Northwest, even though we have written to them and asked them to sort out those compliance issues. We think that they will have enough time to recover. Northwest is still under administration, so we are a little bit more hands-on there. Yesterday, we had a meeting with the administrator. Western Cape is relatively okay, and please bear in mind that the Western Cape is also using municipalities as implementing agencies, so they do disperse on cash flow basis, and that's why the first half of the year is all those milestones around planning. Then later in the year, they pick up on significant milestones like your wall plate, your roof, and others. Northern Cape is also relatively stable. I think Northern Cape is sitting at 60% expenditure right now, if my memory serves me well. So Northern Cape is fine. I think they have managed to get off the blocks quickly. And because last year they didn't do well, so I think this year they have enough to disperse. So Northern Cape is fine. Gauteng, which takes up almost 30% of the budget, we are comfortable with them. I met with the HOD a fortnight ago. One of the reasons why Gauteng didn't get off the blocks quickly is because their account was frozen. There is a service provider that took the department to court and was granted a court order, and the account was frozen. So they could not disperse throughout this period. So they had a backlog of claims that they needed to pay. I think they have already spent more than R1 billion now. So we think that Gauteng will be able to recover. They also had significant accruals, work done in the previous years, but not paid for. So Gauteng will be able to recover, but we were worried about the informal settlements upgrading component. And I'm told that now they are going to use as implementing agencies, HDA and GPF. But we have asked them that whatever they do, they need to make sure that they don't dump the money into any of the organizations, because the last time money was dumped into the organizations, we lost that money back to the fiscus. That was in 2017, when Treasury ended up taking the money back to the fiscus. We want to pay on the basis of milestones and cash flows. So we need to comply as we use the implementing agencies to beef up the capacity of some of the provinces. We also need to make sure that we comply with the provisions in the DORA. Free State, I think there is a problem in the Free State, which we really need to resolve. We met them this morning. I also invited the HOD of Coxter. I think there are challenges there. I think part of the problem is that there's been too many investigations in the Free State, and some of the officials are very much, if you like, conservative. They're scared of making decisions in some cases. You are aware that the Free State Human Settlements is being investigated for asbestos. It's also being investigated for the material supply that was purchased in 2011. So officials are worried because both HODs, the current HOD and the former HODs are also implicated in those investigations. So I think this morning they made it very clear to me that DG will really want to put all of these investigations behind us so that we can focus on our work. So there is a room to recover, but I don't think that they will recover enough before time. So we are still assessing whether their recovery plan is credible. Eastern Cape, I think in Eastern Cape, you have the same officials. I think the only official who has left in Eastern Cape was the HOD, who's now working in KZN. But the current HOD was a COO there, and she understands the business very well. I think there were softer issues in the Eastern Cape that have not been attended to for a very long time. And I'm of the view that both the Premier and the MEC, they should have moved on as quickly as possible and sort out those challenges. Because Eastern Cape and KZN have been our star performing provinces all these years. It's for the first time that Eastern Cape is struggling, and they are struggling badly. And part of the reasons why they are struggling is that they left procurement processes until it was too late. They could not finalize those procurement processes. So please bear in mind that in human settlements, your procurement process for next year has to start in September. If you want to make sure that your supply chain processes are in place, you have to start that process in September so that by the time you start the financial year, all your ducks are lined up. So Eastern Cape got it all wrong this time around. In fact, I'm going back there next week because I want to do a systematic walkthrough of that procurement process, because you are not going to spend your money until you get contractors on site. If the contractors are not on site, you are not going to disperse because there's no activity on site, so you can't disperse significantly. So that's the part that we want. We want site establishment to be prioritized by the province of Eastern Cape. We've been meeting them, we've been talking to them, we've been strategizing with them, bringing in, again, extra capacity. And we looked at some of the service providers. You have service providers that have good capacity, they have a track record of delivering in Eastern Cape. But this year, things were not managed properly. So the two provinces that are keeping us awake at night, if we're talking recovery plan, is Free State and Eastern Cape. I think Limpopo is relatively stable. We're watching them. I think they will be able to spend the money, but I don't think there is a crisis. There's no need for us to take money from Limpopo. We don't like reallocations because it's not solving the problem, and it's collective, if you like, punishment. But if we don't do it, somebody else is going to do it. In the Division of Revenue Act, you have two clauses. You have Section 18 and Section 19. And both clauses allow us and National Treasury to move funds around. If we don't activate Section 18, National Treasury will be compelled to activate Section 19. The problem with Section 19 is that the budget can be taken out of the sector to prioritize other competing demands in health, in defense, home affairs, and other departments that will assist us to turn the economy around. The Section 18 allows us to shift the budget within the sector so that it doesn't get out of the sector. So if we have tried every option, our last option is always, that's why we always do it in November. Our last option is to move the budget from those poor performing provinces to high performing provinces. But we don't end there. We always come in so that we don't have to repeat the same mistake again and commit and shift the budget again. If you look at Northern Cape was not performing well in the previous financial year, but they are better off now. They are, in fact, the best performing in terms of expenditure. We're still a little bit worried about the non-financials, just like the Western Cape, where they're not doing well in terms of the non-financials. But those two provinces are the two provinces that are doing okay now. So we think our recovery plan is credible, and we will be more hands-on in the Free State and the Eastern Cape. I think other provinces can do without us, except Northwest. In Northwest, we've been hands-on for some time, but I think the process of separating the two departments was done at the expense of human settlements. And that is why, if you look at some of the officials who were working with us in human settlements ended up in local government. For instance, the CFO, Makwekyan, has been with local government for years. He's the longest serving CFO, has been with human settlements for years, but we lost him to local government. And I think that transition should have been managed properly. Unfortunately, it wasn't managed. So, Chairperson, we looked at the figures. We can give you preliminary figures of Q2. We are already now in Q3, so we can show you those figures. What we wanted to do is to make sure that at least all the provinces by end of October are above 40%. If they are above 40%, that's a significant milestone. That's a significant, if you like, critical pathing. So I don't think that we should punish those provinces that are already above 40% and that have demonstrated that they will be able to spend the money. SCM matters, Mamuswai. The reality is that, SCM is a very innovative field. It's not a static field because SCM, simply put, is about the chain, and that chain starts in line function. It's the officials, the program managers, the DTG saying, this is what I'm going to purchase next year. And these are the terms of reference and the specification of the work that will be done next year. So I want to start the process of procuring next year, this year. So it's all about planning. It's all about demand management. You are not going to meet your targets if you are going to start the procurement processes or your SCM processes for things to be done next year and start your procurement processes next year. You are shooting yourself in the foot. Everything that you want to do next year, your planning, your demand management, your SCM, your supply chain, it has to be done this year. Provinces like Mpumalanga have mastered the art of planning for procurement. I'm sure you have seen Mpumalanga adverts coming out as early as September. Some of those adverts are targeted for next year. So they have been managing their supply chain process for some time now because they understand that if you don't fix your supply chain upfront, you are going to struggle to spend. The Western Cape as well, KZN, over the years, they have managed the supply chain process. And I think all of us, we were disrupted by COVID-19 this year. Most provinces, we know that they have invested in perfecting their supply chain. It comes with experience, Mamuswai. It's not something that you can just wake up and do. It comes with a lot of experience in planning, a lot of experience in specification, in terms of reference, in understanding the market and understanding the suppliers. And that's why other provinces will create a panel of suppliers, because if you create a panel, you shorten the turnaround time by almost 2 months, because you simply have to issue a request for proposal to those companies that are on the panel to submit the work. So That's how you manage your demand management or your acquisition, if you like. I don't know if there's any other question that we have not touched. Yes, the metros, most metros have been struggling for years now to spend the USDG. The city of Cape Town has never spent 100% of its USDG budget, which then means that every time you don't spend it, then you're creating a problem for us, because it would mean that you are, relinquishing the money back to the fiscus, because in the current climate and current environment, you can never rely on applying for rollovers, because the fiscus is getting smaller and smaller. Now, applying for rollovers would mean that Treasury is not going to grant it, because what's the point of giving rollovers to a sector that is consistently underspending? So that's what is worrying us about the metros. Mangaung as well has been a culprit. They have not been spending their money. The city of Joburg, they have turned the picture around. You can see that last year they got an additional allocation. And the Tshwane struggled. We took money from Tshwane last year. Buffalo City has been consistent. Buffalo City, they got additional allocation in the previous financial year. So, Chairperson, we're not worried about the USDG at this stage, because we're in the second quarter of the municipal financial year. Remember, the municipal budget adjustment is in January. So I will leave it there, Chairperson. If there are questions that we have not covered, please feel free to highlight those questions to us.
Thank you very much.
Chairperson, Honorable Powell, I have a follow-up question.
Okay, let's see. Honorable members, did they ask, you are satisfied with the questions before the follow-ups? Honorable Powell, you can continue.
Thanks, Chairperson. Yeah, it's very interesting to hear Mr. Leshabani's response on the priority human settlement development areas and how those allegedly relate to the letter that was sent to the provincial departments. I'd just like to highlight a quote from Mr. Leshabani's response, where he said that the correspondence that I referred to that went out to provincial governments was in line with the priority human settlement development areas, essentially asking them to reprioritize towards these plans that had been gazetted. So I just want to take a moment to read the provision from the letter that I referred to, and then once again ask my question, which is, does the National Department of Human Settlements intend on giving provincial governments additional funds with which they can use to build against the gazetted priority human settlements development areas? Because as Mr. Leshabani would know, provinces and municipalities have a 3-year planning cycle. So before these priority areas were gazetted, there were a number of catalytic projects that the provincial administration, specifically the Western Cape government, had in the pipeline, that money in the outer years had been allocated against, and they were towards, urban densification and all of these buzzwords that we talk about so often. Now, the letter that was sent to the provincial HOD states, and I quote, "The National Department of Human Settlements acknowledges receipt of the submission of the draft HSDG business plan in terms of DORA. This plan was considered in light of the following: to be the current economic reality, an economic recession that prompted budget cuts and problems posed by COVID-19, and this is where it's crucial, which renders the housing subsidy program approach to deliver top structures fiscally unsustainable." Now, there's nothing in that letter that talks towards asking provinces to reprioritize in line with the gazetted PHSDAs. And then it goes on to instruct provinces to undertake the following: to revise their draft business plans for the 2021-22 targets so as to prioritize the delivery of service sites. So they're saying provinces must essentially move away from building houses for South Africans to moving towards the delivery of service sites, notwithstanding the fact that national government and the Department of Human Settlements are now cutting the title deeds grant next year entirely. So asking provinces to spend their money on service sites, cutting the title deeds program, and B, put measures in place to downscale the delivery of units. The projects that are planned to deliver will only be supported if they benefit the elderly, military veterans, people with disabilities, and child-headed households, and they contribute to medium or high density development.
Honorable Power, can you?
Yes, I'm nearly finished here. We've still got 15 minutes. I'll be one more minute.
No, there are members who want to ask other questions.
That's fine. I'll be one more minute. And then in regards to that, National Department's asking provinces to obtain approval from the National Accounting Officer to allocated budgets for projects that will deliver. So my question is, provincial departments are being asked to reprioritize because of all of these budget cuts. They've already got catalytic projects in the pipeline that don't necessarily speak to these PHSDAs. Can I please have an answer to the question? Is the National Department going to be giving provincial governments additional budget allocations through which to deliver on these PHSDAs, or are they going to be required to cut their existing plans for their catalytic projects that fall outside of the scope? Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable Powell. DG, there was a non, we have not performed very well in terms of Mangosuthu University, which is even in the last financial year, there was that gap. Do we have any problems that you want us to know, or is COVID-related matters only? Just to add on these priority 39 priority areas that have been declared, who has actually identified them? Is it not the provinces and municipalities? Thank you. Can we have the response?
Thank you very much, Chairperson. I will ask DG Ngongo to answer the question on Mangosuthu, and I will, myself and Joseph will answer the question on the PHDA, and I'll answer specifically the question about the additional allocation. But let me start with DG Ngongo, and I will also answer the question about who identified the PHDAs. DG Ngongo on Mangosuthu University of Technology.
Thank you, Chairperson. The transfer of Mangosuthu, the 3.5 million, was delayed also due to the closure of the institutions of higher due to COVID. Let me also indicate they're expecting their final submission by last week Friday, as we were following up. We're hoping that, in fact, we are not hoping, we have to be able to settle this matter by the end of this quarter. What is outstanding here is a portfolio of evidence from the research that was undertaken by the chair of Mangosuthu University of Technology in support of human settlements development. So this is a 1 million on the contract that we have with the department. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you,
Chairperson,
yes.
The priority housing development areas was an IGR exercise. The gazetting of these areas, the 136 areas, it was not a top-down exercise. It was a bottom-up exercise. It was discussed thoroughly and recommended by provinces all provinces, with no exception, accepted the PHDAs. The officials in the Western Cape recommended all PHDAs in the Western Cape, including the municipal officials, that these are the areas that we want to prioritize for human settlements. Remember, PHDAs are being prioritized for human settlements, for economic activities, for transport nodes. So it's just an area where government as a whole, national government, provincial government, and local government, we prioritize human settlements. So we work within the context of DDM, so there's no additional funding required other than to prioritize within the budget that we have so that we don't just build houses everywhere. Last week we had a discussion with some officials from Colombia, and they are saying in South Africa is the only country where human settlements and transport are not talking to each other, because in other countries, it's transport and human settlements that lead. That's why you will have various lines. If you go to Curitiba in Brazil, transport and human settlements, they intersect each other. You are not allowed to build everywhere. You only allowed to build human settlements in areas where there are economic activities, there are transport economic activities. South African government will always continue. We will always provide human settlements to communities. We will always provide housing. But you need to know that we provide various typologies. We don't just provide one product. We provide service sites so that people can come together and form an association and build houses for themselves. And that's why we have Zenzeleni program. We provide top structures to those who are in need, not necessarily to people who have no income, but who happen to have dependencies, because that's not what the policy says. So all of what we are doing in the PHDA is something that we have done it together. By the way, the letter that was written to provinces is a resolution of MINMEC, who sits in MINMEC. It's MECs, it's MMCs for the metros, it's provincial and national officials, it's the CEOs of the entities. That letter is not a letter that was imposed by the national minister. It is a MINMEC resolution because we have discussed these things thoroughly. And by the way, Member Powell, for your information, if there's one province that has been orchestrating this idea of linking human settlements and servicing of stands, it's KZN and Western Cape. Those are the two provinces that have been leading on this matter, that as you upgrade informal settlements, you need service stands. So it makes sense that to deal with urbanization and deal with urbanization thoroughly and decisively, because all major cities in the world, you can go to Rio, you will see favelas. You go to Sao Paulo, you go to Delhi, you come to South Africa. Cape Town is dealing with urbanization. City of Joburg is dealing with urbanization. I don't know if you have been to Joburg South. Tshwane, western part of Tshwane, they're dealing with massive urbanization. So what metros are beginning to do, because for every house that you build, you can provide 3 to 4 service stands. So what we're trying to do in managing urbanization is to make sure that we provide service stands so that people can build houses for themselves. It's in line with this government's policy. And by the way, it's also in line with the Western Cape government policy. So there are no issues here, there are no conflict, and we're not imposing anything. And I would want us to deal with it as something that was thoroughly discussed and recommended by all the officials. In fact, both the officials in the city of Cape Town knows this very well. The officials in the city of, in the province of the Western Cape, they know this very well, that it was not imposed. It's something that was thoroughly discussed, and it's something that all the MECs, with no exception, agreed that we must prioritize title deeds. We must prioritize integrated human settlements. We must in PHDAs, we must prioritize service sites. We must prioritize the upgrading of informal settlements, and we must prioritize PHPs and Zenzeleni So there is no policy contradictions here. In fact, there's coherence. Given that the fiscus is getting smaller and smaller, we need to prioritize those things that people cannot do for themselves. And one of the things that people cannot do for themselves is to provide service scans or like provide stormwater drainage, provide engineering services. So government focuses more on those things that people cannot do for themselves. If there's one thing that South Africans know better and they've been doing for generations, is to build a house. Even my grandmother used to be a carpenter. So I think it's important that we don't create a storm out of nothing. There are no contradictions here. I think there's coherence, both at provincial and at national level, and there is no need for additional allocation. All what is required is good planning at a district level. We activate the DDM model. All what is required as well is to prioritize the budget, because the economy is not doing well. We're not collecting well in terms of revenue. So which means therefore that we are not going to get an increase in terms of the allocation. So therefore, we have to make do with what we have. We have to prioritize the little allocation that we have. So I would urge members of the portfolio committee not to look at the directive that was given to provinces as something that has been imposed. It is a min-meg resolution. All MECs know about it. All HODs know about it. In actual fact, that's what some provinces have been prioritizing all these years. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Chairperson, it's Honorable Powell. Chairperson,
Yes, Honorable Powell.
I have a quick follow-up. So, DG Changana, nobody is disputing the ideology of how sustainable South Africa's previous model around housing was in terms of building people houses, and the fact that rather giving people service sites is a much more sustainable way and model of working. It's cheaper, it's faster, people get their service stands, they can, as you say, South Africans have got incredible building skills. You just need to go to places like Awa and see the 3-story steel structures. People are incredible at building in this country. That's not what I'm disputing. I'm not disputing the ideology. The question that I'm asking is that the revision that provinces have been instructed to undertake is in the immediate term. So the idea of moving towards a more sustainable model, we all understand. What I'm asking is, provinces and municipalities had a 3-year plan. They all have a 3-year plan. They had a business plan in line with catalytic projects, building people houses, building sectional title walk-ups, a whole bunch of the same typologies that Mr. Shabani talks about. So instead of them being able to complete those catalytic projects and then move on to rapid delivery in terms of the priority human settlement development areas, the concern that I have, and it's not a political concern, it is a concern that needs to be fully aired and discussed with this committee, is that an instruction has now gone out that provinces must revise in the immediate term what was planned on the NTREF cycle, which is going to have huge impacts on what provinces can deliver and what communities are expecting. That hasn't come to this committee. And the spin that we're given about how this is, towards the achievement of the PH STA is like, let's just be real. Let's just be honest with each other in this committee. South Africa's run out of money. Okay. We're now having to scale back on human settlements delivery. And it's not in the medium term or the long term. It's in the long term. And I really, hold on, Chairperson, this is an incredibly important topic.
No, I know it's important, but we're about to reach the time for the meeting, and you must allow the department to respond. Now you've taken
we've got 3 minutes left on the clock, and I'm sure we can all go over by 1 minute or 2 minutes if necessary. And secondly, DG Changana, what is of concern is this instruction that provinces must get the national CFO to sign off on all contracts, which I'm not sure about the constitutionality of that instruction. Where does that instruction come from? Why do we have that instruction? Chairperson, perhaps this is not the right time for this committee to have this discussion. But this directive that has gone out, in which the provincial ministers sat, has massive consequences for the future of housing delivery in this country. And it has not once been discussed with this portfolio committee. And I would hedge a bet that very few of the members sitting in this committee are even aware of this instruction and this massive policy deviation that's taken place as a result of the budget cuts. So can we please, perhaps if we can't do it now, at a later stage, really unpack what this means for housing delivery in South Africa, what this means for South Africans, and how we're going to make sure that people who do get service sites instead of houses are going to be given title deeds with those service sites in line with the title deeds restoration grant program having been cut. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable Powell. I'm going to allow the DG to respond to those.
No, but my hand has been up, Chairperson.
Oh, I didn't see it. Sorry, Honorable Mashego. Come in, Honorable Mashego.
No, maybe just in a minute, Chair. Listening to Member Powell, there seems to be a contestation whether was the discussion on the letter discussed in the DDM or in the MINMEC, because if Western Cape as a province did not have an issue in the MINMEC,
I'm not asking that, Honorable Mashego. I'm asking if it was
no,
discussed.
don't do that.
Honorable Powell.
Don't do that. When you speak, I don't interject you.
But please don't misrepresent what I'm asking.
No, Powell, I hate to respond to you in the manner you do, because you have been speaking for some time. I never interjected you. Please respect other people. No, I'm simply saying, Chair, the Member Powell might create an impression that in actual fact, the view that MINMEC and the DDM has agreed on the instruction written is not necessarily the correct one, because she's contesting that this is an up-down instruction. Now, if that is the case, it doesn't matter. Can we allow that and let there be an item to discuss in the meeting? Because, Chair, remember, MINMEC is an executive decision. Ours is to oversight, is not to decide what MINMEC must do. Is to oversight whether MINMEC is doing that which they decided upon. So whether this committee knows or agreed or not is not an issue. MINMEC as an executive structure takes decision, implement, we oversight. But we must not underscore what that which Member Powell is raising, that she is of the view that this is an imposition decision. Let them make an item. Let's discuss it in a committee, and I'm sure that the department can show us minutes and decisions of both the MINMEC and the DDM decisions, and therefore then, if Western Cape is of the view that they might have been bulldozed in the MINMEC, they might want to raise that point in that particular discussion. But for responses to this meeting, there is a MINMEC, there's a DDM decision, and there is a letter written out of the discussion that all department must remember. We are moving from premise that the district model takes into cognizance the existence of 3 spheres of government in one meeting. That's my point, Chair.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Honorable Mashego. Can I give the who's it? Okay.
Thanks. It's just a minute.
I want to surprise you because we must allow DG to respond. Because okay. Issues, yes, let me surprise you. Thank you. I'm sorry for that, because okay. DG must respond because our meeting. DG, you want to respond within a minute or two, so.
Chairperson, we will take guidance from you. I guess perhaps the starting point for Honorable Powell would have been to ask us to unpack that directives, but she's not doing that. She's concluding already. It would have been helpful if we were asked to unpack, to come to the portfolio committee and unpack how we have arrived at that decision, so that she can understand. My worry is that she's already concluding on what has happened, but we have not shared the facts with her on why we have arrived at that decision and how we have arrived at the decision. And I think that the proposal by Honorable Mashego makes a lot of sense. In fact, I wanted to ask my colleague Nabu Cheney to respond out of respect to Member Powell, because Neville Cheney is responsible for the planning, strategic planning and business planning that comes from metros. It's Neville Cheney who's been interacting with all the provinces, supported by Joseph, because Joseph focuses more on the implementation side and Neville focuses more on the strategic planning side. If maybe just a minute, I can ask Neville to comment. Neville?
No, DG, we don't have time.
No.
I've suppressed.
That's fine, Chairperson. Thank you,
I've
Chairperson.
suppressed other members to speak. But what is important here is that members of parliament, we are the parliament of the republic to oversight on the executive. And we cannot fight the battle of executive. In Western Cape, there is a premier, there is a MEC, there is an executive mayor, there's all these relevant structures, which they could, if they were not agreeing with the letter or having a problem with the instruction, they could have interacted with national government or through the premier or the MEC. I think we should not create an impression that national government and provincial government and local municipalities, there is no framework that is governing their interaction and how they should actually handle one another as united South Africa, but interdependent. So I think what we can do is to look at the framework of intergovernmental relation. And as we're going to deal, you remember there was even an issue with the district model, Honorable Mashiro, that is not constitutional. That's when we should bring those intergovernmental relations and understand the constitutionality of united South Africa and interdependent governments. So that is how we should deal with these issues, because we cannot argue on behalf of another spheres of government unless if there is a formal query from that government, and it will then come to the committee. Then we can then table it. We cannot actually just put the issue on the program, because we have not actually ourselves clarify ourselves in terms of intergovernmental relation framework and what is expected of sphere of government in collaborating and coordinating their activities with one another. I think we will have to deal with that framework and have understanding how the system should work without us.
Chairperson, a point of order from Honorable Powell, please.
No, I'm summarizing, Honorable Powell.
Okay, well, when you're done, a point of order, please.
Okay, raise the point of order, because I must close.
You're saying that this committee can't ask for things, that they must come through different spheres of government. This committee and any member of this committee can ask for clarity on any matter of subjects that come before it.
Honorable member.
And
Honorable member,
myself have asked for a slot where we can get feedback on this. So it doesn't need to come from the Premier or from the DDM. We as members conducting oversight may ask officials for clarity on anything. We are asking the officials for a full discussion on this directive, which has significant implications for the people of this country.
Then you must allow Bana to speak, because Bana was
Honorable Powell, your order is not sustained, because I'm responding to what the request of us discussing. What I'm saying, we must start with the fiscal framework and understand it. I'm not saying you must not ask a question, but we cannot represent a government here. We can only oversight. That's what I've said. What is oversight? So the interpretation too, again, now you are misinterpreting what I'm saying. I'm saying where we should start is to discuss the intergovernmental relation and understand this interdependent and united South Africa, how it should work, and clarified by the legislation, because there is the framework. That's why there is MINMEC, which take decisions which bind other provinces. So I'm just saying, let's close it at that. we'll have the time where we'll start with the intergovernmental framework. Thank you very much. I want to close the meeting in that note.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, members. The meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, Chairperson. Viva, Chair.
Thanks, Ms. Nancy. Have a nice weekend, honorable members. Thank you very much.
Chair. Thank you. A nice weekend, Sis. Sis Banana.
Siyabonga Sihlalo.
Ngiyabonga, Chair. Thank you. Bye.
A nice weekend, Sis Powell.
DG. DG Chagala. Eh?
Honorable Mashak, how are you, sir?
I'm not fine.
What
In
went wrong?
3 months, it's been a full